Thank you all. I am completely overjoyed and full of emotions. I don't have a vocabulary for it right now. I don't. I appreciate all of your feedback, your texts, your responses. Those of you all who read it on Reddit, thank you so much, especially my friends. I'm pretty sure got personalized text messages and took the time to read out, but you all definitely selected just to read this stranger's writing, and I'm humbly grateful for that. I wanted to celebrate this lunar eclipse that I just found out about, even after I titled this mini series "In Many Moons." Found out about the lunar eclipse tonight, and wanted to just gift a special reward to you all. I won't post this installment until next Wednesday, maybe as a double feature, because it's not a complete chapter. It's just a brief little snapshot into a Ray's world as we start to unravel and unfold this dinner. I I am excited to have people read my words. I have not had that done since college. I used to love writing papers in college. So I majored in history because I could write papers well, and I was ready to graduate and get out. I had been there too long. And my professors loved reading my writing and telling me how great they enjoyed my words. And creatively, over the years, I have just started trying to create characters from all the things in my mind that I've heard, that I've experienced, that I've read. So this is definitely a turning point for me that you all are a huge part of, and that's why I have to give you a gift. So the next installment of In Many Moons, the Lunar Eclipse edition for May 13th, 2022, is entitled The Invitation. And play this as you like. I'm definitely in an appreciative space. So if you're there or wanting to get there, I hope this resonates with you. Each step Ray took towards the bathroom, her spine validated everything that had just happened. This was not another episode or illusion. This was real. She noticed how quiet her feet were now on the floor. Light as a feather, they glided her down the hallway, not making a sound. Ray smiled to herself at the feeling of almost floating away. Relief left as soon as Ray dried the last splash from her chin. The conversation was real, everyone was real, and this was planned. But there was still one unsolved mystery. Everything made sense, but the only thing Ray had ever in her life been sure about him. Ray, I've asked you 3 times to discontinue this conversation until we get home. I understand you. I see you, honey. I do. I need you to see me. Oh, okay, sweetie. Ray agreed. All right, he assured. Ray exhaled all the words she wanted to vent. Don't pass out. I can see it now. Your mama would have sworn I did it. Ray's laugh sounded louder than it was, and she came to the end of her deep breaths. The comic relief softened her posture, and she dropped the seat back just enough to see the stars and still grab the inside of his elbow. Her heartbeat slowed down as she watched him in admiration. His head shaking prompted Ray to try and hide her impending grin. That's what I like to see, he mentioned, forcing her to show all of her teeth. There it is. Ray's grin turned into a giddy attitude as she gladly followed his trail away from everything that had just happened behind them. Hours had passed before they pulled into their driveway. Ray was in a deep sleep. He turned the car off and sat there for a while. The silence and stillness allowed his mind to think. Tonight, he confirmed. He would do it as soon as they walked in. This would be the night. For weeks he battled with serving Ray divorce papers. He was more than gracious to Ray and wanted her to have whatever she wanted or needed to make their dissolution easier. She could have it all or sell it all. He loved her, but tonight was it. This would be the very last time. He woke her up gently, rubbing her thigh and whispering her name. Ray stretched and continued to grin, still grateful for her husband and all he is to her. He grabbed their things, opened the door, and they walked inside their home. Ray took off running to the small bathroom, glad she wasn't carrying anything. She finished up and washed her hands, ready to jump on her patient lover to cuddle and kiss the night away. Ray's steps down the hall echoed at this hour. Everybody must be asleep, she thought. It was all so still and quiet. Ray entered the kitchen where she had watched his faint shadows move across the countertops. Every light was off in the kitchen except the island lights illuminating the playful colors in the black marble and a stack of white papers. Ray immediately recognized what was happening and her heart rate grew faster and she felt the urge to grab her chest, but she refused. Ray, you have been one of the most amazing people I have ever met in my life. His voice drifted off. Ray woke up drenched and sat up straight in the bed. Before opening her eyes to scan reality, she reached for a small pill in her water by her nightstand. She began the induction of the emotional coma and laid back down until it kicked in. She wouldn't tell him the dream. It was just like the others. He never left her. This was all in her mind. Mr. Marshall had advised Ray to not share every doomsday dream and feeling with her husband. Ray thought of his light-hearted voice and reassurance. Ray's feelings were real, but as Mr. Marshall enlightened, so was his. Some of us, Ray, we don't know how, because we've never had to carry all that you carry, Ray, she recalled him saying. Marriage is about knowing which straws to weigh and which ones to break before the last one. Mr. Marshall's words concluded. As soon as the pill and the meditation over those words relieved Ray, she rolled over to kiss him and spoon him, genuinely ecstatic he was always right beside her. What you did for me last night was the greatest gift I ever received, Ray whispered in his ear. I told you, he said sharply, we're not doing that anymore. If you would have told me before, we would never be around. Not until somebody addressed it. No, we are not living like that. I know, I should have told you. But not telling you, Ray paused before she continued to explain. Not telling you felt right, sweetie. It did. It did. I didn't want to burden you. I definitely didn't want you to ever see me like that. I understand. I get it. But you don't have to hide that stuff from me. You shouldn't hide it from me. Hell, I know you're crazy, he said, making her grin. Ray, I knew you were working through some things on our first date. I just didn't know what it was. I'm glad I know now, he reassured her. We don't ever, and you should never, feel you have to bite your tongue and swallow the truth for anybody. Ray nodded and let tears of relief wash over her face. He pulled her in closer to him, holding Ray for what felt like the first time ever. A slight laughter started, and Ray asked him, "What?" "I've never seen you look at me like that." "Like what?" Ray said through a grin. "You know," he welcomed Ray's playful banter. "You were just surprised, worried, happy, kind of mad. I don't know. It was just a look." Ray knew the look he was talking about, but there was no words for it. That entire hour felt like 5 minutes. Ray's anxiety attack in the parking lot led to them missing the first few hours of entertainment. They had sat for hours on the curb behind the truck bed discussing all of the confidential files he knew were there, but Ray never brought up. He didn't understand her choice of still joining the dinner, but he agreed. They walked in and they took their places just in time as the food was ready, and so was he. Before the first drumstick made it to a plate, he had stood up from the table. Ray wanted to share a concerned look with him before he grabbed the entire attention of the dining hall, but he was already speaking. Ray sat there as he addressed everything she revealed to him in a brevity and braveness that made her head spin. "Let's go, Ray." He snapped her out of her dizzy spell. Ray got up and felt the world had turned upside down, but she was enjoying it. She wanted to laugh, cry, run, fly, fall, stop and look back, but she didn't. She mirrored his commanding gait and formidable posture as he opened her door, waited until she was in, and got in the driver's side as they drove off. "I didn't know you were going to say anything. And when you did, I don't know, you sounded and everybody was it was." Ray stumbled to find her words. "It was unexpected, sweetie, but very much appreciated. It felt like a movie." "That shouldn't have been the first time that happened based on everything you told me, but I get it now. I don't mind being the first. Actually, I like that it happened that way because no one, and Ray, look at me, no one." He stopped to look deep into her eyes, and she understood who the no one was a placeholder for. "No one can say a word to me about how and what I do for us, this, you, me." He illustrated this point clear as ever for Ray. "We can't grow that here. No, we're not going to grow that stuff here. That's where I'm going to need you to—" I know, Ray admitted. "Dig it up, burn it, chop it up, banish it, whatever you need to do," he added. "Anything but what you've been doing with it." He looked back at her, understanding he needed to be more gentle this time, and gave her a kiss on the forehead before finishing his thoughts. "I ain't them, Ray. I love you and I get enough of my fair shit from you. I can't carry theirs too. I won't. You shouldn't either. If cursing folks out is how I get to see more of the woman I had last night, baby, we about to go on a cursing tour." They both laughed and held each other until Ray drifted back to sleep. He waited until her body was completely limp and gently laid her in the bed. He walked out of the room normally, but felt an eagerness to reach the sunroom. With each step he took away from Ray, his body got heavier and slower. Swallowing became something he was voluntarily aware of doing. Blaring sounds crescendoed in his ears, and the staircase had never appeared so blurry. Making it to the sunroom was the only thought his brain deciphered from the words and voices swirling in his mind. His brain boomeranged her, grabbing her chest, gasping for air and falling to the ground, her eyes begging him for something he didn't have. He paced the sunroom until all the unfamiliar, frantic, flustered emotions subsided. He had no idea what that was, but he was sure he never wanted to feel it again. He sat exhausted on the ottoman, focused on fixing whatever broke inside of him, trying to prevent the sigh of reality. The two choices he had were much like the two choices he heard after him and Ray left the curb to join her family. This time he could make the decision alone for himself. Before his mind reached him, his heart decided. He crept back upstairs, not wanting to wake Ray up. Looking at her sleeping peacefully, he grabbed his phone from the nightstand and walked out of the room to start his search. There would be no surprises or threats this time, he thought to himself. He didn't want it to happen that way. Almost an hour later, in the sunroom, the first unknown number flashed across the screen. He answered. I know this is coming out of nowhere. Thank you first, man, for calling me. I know the message might have came off cryptic, he acknowledged. He placed his words carefully and made sure to pause for possible reactions. I appreciate it. I know what I'm about to ask is asking for a lot. His words continuously filled the room like the particles floating through beams that striped the furniture. He sat and talked, walked and talked, brewed tea and talked, and almost every time prematurely ended the conversation to pick up the line from another unfamiliar area code. He was relieved after the last goodbye and final text of details. This was the most he had talked in his life. He took a moment to process everything that had just happened. Enjoying the change of tide sitting on the ottoman, the sigh of reality floated outwards, and he peered upwards, envisioning Ray sleeping and smiling. And then he shook his head and joined her grin. He placed his phone in his pocket and made his way to the kitchen to start more tea. His reflection from the fridge teased him a bit. He could have sworn he looked a couple of inches taller.